Mohamed Salah is still yet to agree a new contract with Liverpool, but what actually happens around the negotiating table? Mohamed Salah caused fresh concern in the Liverpool fanbase earlier this month when again piling the pressure onto FSG to resolve his future. Out of contract in 2023, the Egyptian has made it clear he wants to stay at Anfield. Yet there has been no breakthrough in negotiations, with the forward now 12 months away from being free to sign on a pre-contract agreement with overseas clubs. It's quite clear that he should stay put on Merseyside. He would become the club's highest paid earner and the best paid player in their history, with it safe to assume that his demands would perhaps put him on par with the wealthiest earners in the Premier League, if not in Europe. From the outside, the issue there would be FSG have a clear wage structure in place, and giving Salah figures in line with the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and Kevin De Bruyne would perhaps be substantially more than the rest of the Red squad. Whether Liverpool's American owners could afford such figures, only their accountants could say. But with everyone an expert these days, thanks to showcasing their own negotiation prowess on Football Manager, fans could be forgiven for feeling anxious and wondering what on earth is the hold-up. So if Salah isn't asking for anything crazy, what is he actually asking for? And if he wants to stay, Jurgen Klopp wants him to stay, and FSG want him to stay, how can the Reds appear no closer to finding a resolution with the forward? Well, unsurprisingly, contract negotiations are a lot more complex than they appear on Football Manager. Here's what really goes on behind the scenes when it's time for player and club to discuss new terms. The offer. So, when a player's contract is expiring, who decides what offer to make him? It would appear it is a joint decision from the powers that be at a club. When offering a player a contract, the chief executive will email the owners and everyone down to the manager will be copied into the email, one former Championship manager told The Echo.
Everybody at the club has to be in sync with that. As a manager, you do get asked your opinion.
Meanwhile, the player and agent will go into negotiations with their clear own demands in mind. One Liverpool Champions League winner recalled when speaking to The Echo.
I was away at the time before I signed my new deal in 2008. My agent at the time said, "This is what we're going to ask for, this is what we think you should be on, and this is what we'll accept."
The negotiations. Negotiations can drag on for obvious reasons as players, agents and club try to find an agreement that suits them.
It does drag on sometimes and supporters often get frustrated and can't understand why, but it's about getting a deal which is fair for all parties.
A former Championship manager explained. All parties is the key and there is a balance that needs to be struck. It's getting it right where the club aren't spending more money than they need to, but equally keeping their assets and the players who are going to help them win trophies. While players will be kept up to date with how negotiations are going, they tend to keep their noses out.
I was kept up to date with them but never got directly involved with the club or any club I've been involved with at all.
A former Premier League defender explained to The Echo. The money. Believe it or not, players aren't that concerned about the actual wage they're on as long as it's fair. They know they are in a fortunate position where they are made very wealthy at a very young age, but are also well aware that they are equally saving for retirement.
Normally your agent asks you what you want and you tell them and leave them to it.
A Liverpool Champions League winner said.
I wasn't that interested by the money side of it. Once you sign, they tell you what you're going to be earning and the amounts you'll get over the years. Before that, I didn't ask and I wasn't that fussed. That's what you've got agents for. They deal with all of that.
Contract length. Given the short-term nature of a footballer's career, it should be no surprise that their priorities change as they get older. As such, contract length becomes their focus as opposed to their weekly wage.
I signed one contract when we'd just been relegated from the Premier League,
recalled one former top-flight defender.
I had 1 year left in the Championship and I got offered a 3-year deal on quite a lot less money. I could have had another year still on Premier League money, but I decided to take less money and have another 3 years at the club.
Clauses and bonuses. Given the fact that players aren't hands-on in their own contract negotiations, you can forgive them for perhaps not knowing every single clause that goes into their respective deals. They might know length of contract and weekly wage, but there's a lot more detail that goes into those contract sheets which they put their signature to.
You'll know your weekly wage and match appearance bonus. You get the contract sheet and it's massive. Honestly, there's so much stuff on there, about 20 pages worth.
The dressing room. Footballers might all have fancy cars and all the most expensive gifts and gadgets, but discussing one's wage is very much taboo when it comes to the dressing room. It doesn't matter if you're having trouble agreeing fresh terms, it's just not brought up. One Liverpool title winner recalls.
We never really spoke about it, you kept it to yourself. You can probably go on the internet and see what everyone is on, but in our day it was in-house. You didn't talk about it and you kept it to yourself. That's the way it was.
And while players might have a rough idea about who the club's highest earner is, in truth they aren't really bothered as long as they are happy with their own contract. The manager. A manager's role in transfer negotiations is rather different than it used to be. There was a time when they were extremely hands-on, involved in every nitty-gritty detail, but the game has since evolved and they now don't need to get their hands dirty and they're left free to focus on matters on the pitch and around the training ground. Agents. Agents admittedly have a bad reputation in football. The perception is of a greedy leech, milking both the player and his club for all they can before leaving both in the lurch when no longer of value. Yet, a good agent can be worth his or her weight in gold to both a player and club. Signing the contract. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the offer is on the table, players just want to ensure that both themselves and their families are left happy. So, that's what goes into a player's contract negotiations. When I say it isn't as simple as Football Manager, I really mean it. So, let's give Mo some time, and hopefully this complicated process will soon give the happy ending that Liverpool fans wish for.